The next topic is the church or Kemet. Who has the answer for Black America? Now, just a few things to understand this section. This section was built and agreed upon because there's one thing for us to intellectually engage, which is great. Now, what does it look like? In this section, this is what you should be looking for. You should be looking for both of them giving practical steps on who can functionally change things and what that change might look like. But not only that, as they go through their sections, I'm going to ask that that even though I know both of you have a ton of slides, that we stick to this particular topic. So that means that both 20 minutes will be specifically this topic, not attempting to grab information that you want to share in that section, because that will be viewed as misinformation for this section. The rebuttals need to actually be rebuttals to what's presented, not what we want to add to the discussion. So that means in order for a debate to be clear and helpful for everyone, let's stay on topic informationally and help our rebuttals to rebut what's actually presented versus just introducing more information that we want to go on. Brother Jabari, your 20 minutes is beginning now, and you are set to go.
Dwa, thank you. Who has the answer for Black America, the church or Kemet? Now, let me say something to you that is probably not great to say in a debate. The reality is that we have to figure out how to work together. This is not a situation where I'm going to say to you that unless you rock in Kemet, we're not going to move forward. That's not what I'm saying at all. I would not say that. And honestly, while we've had a spirited debate here, this is a brother that I can work with. That's a brother I can work with. This is a church that's doing important work. That doesn't mean that we are not going to have difficult discussions, pointed discussions, but we have to learn how to have pointed discussions and difficult discussions without becoming disunited. So I need to say that. I am not suggesting that you must be Kemet in order for our entire nation to move forward. I do believe, however, that the paradigm that we see in ancient Kemet and the actual behaviors that we see those practitioners and those teachers coming forth with are absolutely redeeming for our community in 2019 and beyond. And so I want you to start by just looking at some of our master teachers. These are folks, two of them, who actually helped hewn Jabari into who Jabari is. You're seeing on the left, who is this? Dr. Ben. By the way, I'm not hearing those names on this side. Come on now. In the middle, who we seeing? Sheikh Anta Diop. And then on the end, we're seeing Dr. John Henry Clark. These amazing Africans who are now ancestors actually fought for us to understand the full breadth of African history. It is difficult to understand how to move forward today if you don't understand what you did yesterday. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had no memory of the days, years before. What would you do? Where would you go? That is essentially what our oppressors would like us to do. They'd like us to be a people that began in enslavement. They'd like us to be a people that actually have not proven that we can rule the world in peace and prosperity. The peace comes first. And so I want you to look at these elders and understand they did important work. Two of them, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, were actually professors of mine at Cornell University. Amazing people. But I have to say that this elder is the one whose practice has allowed me to stand upright. When I have a problem and I'm not communicating, he calls me. Beloved, where are you? I have not heard from you. Are you okay? And his walk has been 50 years in the Kemetic tradition. So please understand that when we look at the Kemetic tradition and we look at its resurgence, its renewal in the West, it hasn't actually been extremely long. We should not be judged on whether we are able to do things that the Christian church is able to do. Particularly because, and you may be upset when I say this, but it is true, Christianity was given to us in the entire time we've been here. So that in some ways, even those wonderful conscious Africans who were Christian had a head start in trying to do things in our community. So I'm not trying to match Christianity, the church. I want to be able to make a strong movement that can partner with you. That's what I want to do. And I truly hope that what will happen is you're going to go back to an ancient form of Christianity. Because if you do that, what we do will look almost no different from each other. Then we'll be able to work in lockstep. That's what I'm hoping. And so I want to just recognize that there's been a lot of work done, but more needs to be done. Take a look at this incredible queen here. Her name is Queen Afua. One of the things that we have seen the Kemetic tradition do in excellence is bring forth health and wellness in our community. That if there's anything that marks the Kemetic community, it is that. Excellence in diet, excellence in dietary practices and health practices. That's what you're usually going to see when you see a practitioner. My elder is over here eating oranges. Not a candy bar, oranges. Not fried chicken, oranges. And look at his face. He's like, that was good. That's one of the things that the Kemetic tradition has brought forward in excellence, health and wellness. But I do want to say to you that in order for us to understand what we have to do, we have to have clarity of purpose. What is the biggest challenge that faces African Americans? Just call them out. What do you think? The police, racism, poverty, abortion, education, self-hatred. You're going to call all of those out, and I'm going to say yes, 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 and yes. But I want us to understand that we actually have the resources to meet those things now. On October 5th of 2019, if we truly sought to actually address those issues, we would be able to address them. You'll see here that we are actually reaching buying power of nearly over $1.3 trillion of buying power. So if we wanted to solve all of those things you called out, we actually could. So the question you have to ask is, why aren't we? And I'm going to argue that something really serious has gone on. We have a challenge with the image of what the African is, of who the African is. We even have people that don't want to say they're African. And so what we actually have to do is we have to now be corrected. Did you know that Black and Latino youth watch up to an hour more TV every day? That Black and Latino youth spend about 45 minutes more on other forms of media? And then there's an interesting study that comes out, this is really small here, from the Journal of Communications Research that actually says that the only group whose self-esteem increases with more television is white boys. So we're watching more and it's damaging us more. This is a critical issue and we must address it. I'm going to play the shortest possible clip of this. The shortest. In fact, I might even speak through it. But understand that CNN actually did a study. They recreated the dog test.
Go.
Our second major finding, even Black children as a whole have some bias toward whiteness, but far less than white children.
She'll be the smart child. And why is she the smart child?
Because she is white.
Okay. Show me the dumb child. And why is she the dumb child?
Because she plays.
What I want you to understand is that our major challenge is understanding who we are and what we're capable of. Having a reconstructed, healthy view of what what being African is. The best way to do that is to actually go back and fetch it. To remember who we are in order to know what we're able to do. We can have $3.1 trillion of buying power. But if we don't recognize that we need to tie our bundles together, that the white man's ice is not colder, well, I'll let that sink in, that the white man's ice is not colder, then what will happen is we will be able to do those things together. That's what we have to do. And I would say to you that there is no tradition that is better equipped to do that than understanding what we did when we were on top of the world. You're looking here at Imhotep. Hey, say Imhotep with me. Imhotep is one of the world's first recorded doctors. Imhotep is one of the world's first recorded engineers. Builds the world's first building in stone. And we can't even buy a house in the neighborhoods we live in. How about Ptahhotep? Say Ptahhotep with me. Ptahhotep, as I said to you, the person that wrote the world's oldest book. Yet we are people who believe that we should be illiterate, whose children, even in 2019, are told if they excel, that they must be acting white. Here's King Amenemhat III. Say Amenemhat III. By the way, he's always depicted with very large locks. Always. We should be clear who this is. And he, during his reign, he brings forward one of the most powerful and early mathematic papyruses. Today it's usually called the Rhind Mathematic Papyrus. Say Rhind Mathematic Papyrus. I'm not telling you that because you need to know who Rhind is. Usually these names are just given to the Europeans who purchased the thing and probably couldn't even read it. But you're going to have to do research. That's why I'm telling you this. By the way, if you thought of math this way, listen to what the person who wrote it, his name is Ames, by the way, and I'm going to look at Ames, a member of my shrine over there. This is what Ames says about what the text is. He says, it's an accurate reckoning for inquiring into things and a knowledge of all things, mysteries, all secrets. If you told kids in a third grade class that you were going to teach them how to understand all secrets before they learned an African form of mathematics, they would be more interested. We have to tell these stories. And then, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I did earlier. We gave the world spirituality. If we recognize that the forms that are most prevalent today are nothing but copies, poor copies, of that which you hewn in Africa, then we would actually approach this from a different perspective. And so I would say to you, family, that the most important thing that we can do is actually to understand who we are. Maybe you thought I was going to give you a long treatise on how we're going to build black economics. We have black economics. Maybe you thought I was going to tell you about how you were going to save black relationships. Well, in actuality, we have plenty of black relationships, but we need to have proper models for how they should occur. And if we had proper models for how they should occur, we would actually save them. And I want you to understand that the other traditions have problems with women. They have problems with women. If that is what you're doing and saying, how can you actually decide how to have a wonderfully balanced relationship? A relationship based in what we would call ma'at. This queen here is my equal. She's my equal. If you follow an ancient guide for how relationships should occur, the issues we have with the relationships, the issues we have with abortion, this brother mentioned, would literally vanish. The problem is that our families have been rendered asunder. They were destroyed by a cruel process, by a cruel subjugator. And that subjugator actually has to recognize that when we understand who we are, there's no way they can stand in our way. Now, understand something very interesting. Africans today are actually situated all over the world. Do you know that there are more than 1 billion Africans on the planet? We talk about the number of people of Chinese descent. We talk about the number of Indians. By the way, India is about to pass China in terms of population. But we never talk about the number of Africans. Most Indians are in India. Most Chinese are in China. Africans are all over the world. You could see that as a problem, or like the veritable pieces of a sar, you can see that as our unity allowing us to resurrect ourselves. I'm not saying you got to move to Ghana, but be powerful and work with those Ghanaians in New York. That's what they need you to do, by the way. They don't need you taking up space and where we gonna sleep. That's not what they need. They need for us to strategize around the world. We are situated in key places around the world. If we had knowledge of who we were, there would be no problem that would actually befall us. And so this is what we must do. We have to have a corrective understanding of what it is to be African. There is no problem that is more present to people of African descent. There is no problem that has been more difficult for people of African descent. I know I have not had the opportunity to see the psychologist after my enslavement. Have you? Did they send them into the plantation and say, look, we know it's been really rough. We want to talk to you about how you feel and what you think about you. That didn't happen. We just been going along, continuing to live broken lives. Now, some of us have actually gotten it together. That's wonderful, because Africans are people that cannot be held down. But in 2019, we have to go further. I'm going to say to you, family, that I was raised a Christian in a black church. It was Roman Catholic, but it was black. There wasn't nobody else there. And when I go back to see my family who attends, those people still love me. Those people still are able to talk to me about the story of morality and how to move forward as a man. But I am going to say to you, as long as they are ensconced in that tradition, they won't find guides that will help them understand how we have to move together as a community. You know, when I talk about African, thank you, they won't. And that's why it's of critical importance for us to go back and fetch it, go back and understand who we are and where we've been at the top of the world. If I had more time, I'd talk to you about how Kemetic spirituality, in many ways, is just African spirituality. It didn't originate in Kemet. It came to its flower in Kemet. But it's not. These are African traditions that we can actually prove were in existence for over 40,000 years. We were doing these amazing things before we have record of other people. We don't know where they were or what they were doing. They don't know where they were and what we were doing. We gave these things to the world. If we continue to run from them, we're going to continue to spin in circles. That which we need is already amongst us. And so I want you to understand that there are Kemetic shrines popping up everywhere. Everywhere. In fact, in our small space, we stream live. And when we stream live, we have people from all over the world who are now saying, well, who is it that I am? And I have been honored to take 3,000 Africans to the continent. Honored to do that. Every year, my wife and I take groups to Kemet and to Ghana and to Ethiopia. Yes, Ethiopia. Because we have to understand what we did and what we're doing. We have to become a global people. I know that which was given to me as a Christian was the best that my parents could give me. But they didn't expect me just to do what they gave me. They expected me to do better with it. I know your parents believe that too. Sometimes when I'm talking about the Abrahamic traditions, people really become hurt and offended. And I know why. It's because you're thinking I'm speaking ill of those people who loved you, who brought you to those healing spaces. I get it. What I am saying is that we have to go further. We cannot remain there. They expected us to go further. And if you believe you are honoring your mothers and fathers by remaining there, what about those mothers and fathers who were killed when they were practicing African traditions? Have you forgotten their names? Or would you like to just say that they transitioned? Would you like to just say there was no force, they just became something else? When we do that, we do them a disservice. When we do that, we do ourselves a disservice. When we do that, we cannot go back and get what we need. And so I'm imploring you, family, whether you are rocking with Kemet or something else, we have to study what we did in order to truly understand what we have to do. And I will say to you that no other people on the planet have had a richer, more prosperous history. I know it's hard to see that from the vantage point of 400 or 500 years of hell. I know it's hard to see that. But you have to understand that if we actually look at the long history that we have been here, there is no problem that is a problem. The very story of Astasar and Heru is a story about a broken family, about a woman raising a boy to a man without a man in the home. I know that that's not something we experience here, right? That's not happening in Philly, is it? These stories will be guides. And so please follow them, and we will be strong again. Dua.
All right. All right. Home stretch. Well, thank you, Brother Jabari. If it's okay, I'm going to make a presentation, but then I also might slip a few questions just because I understand I think I'll have the final rebuttal, so I want to be able to slip in some opportunities to respond even now that you can add into your rebuttal preemptively. But thank you so much. I agree with so much of what you said, especially on the need for us to work together, and pretty much most of the things you had to say about various Kemetic movements and the positive things they bring to our community is things that I've seen and experienced and appreciated as well. So with this last, portion about, Bisrat or Kemet, who has the answer for Black America, I'd like to take this again. I'd kind of like to present some information and again weave some questions to lay out throughout in two particular ways. And what I don't want to do though is, and it's because of my particular Hymenot, which Meacham School of Hymenot is like theology. And so this is an Ethiopian word for theology as well. So we use that. And my particular Hymenot of the scriptures as it relates to kind of the Lord's plan for us in this world is not one of triumphalism, because the Yeshua that I believe in is one that told me that foxes have holes, but the Son of Man doesn't have a place to lay his head, and that we can actually expect persecution in this world. And one of the reasons that I find the Bisrat, the gospel of Yeshua, so compelling, and not only the answer for Black America, but for the world, for everybody, there's a lot of reasons I could give, and we only got 20 minutes. One of the main reasons I want to do is actually that it best prepares us and enables us and empowers us to be witnesses of a kingdom, of God's kingdom on this earth, even while we have already seen it come to fruition in the person of Jesus Christ, and yet it is not completely fit. It's already present, but it's not finished yet at the same time. And we live in a world where there's brokenness and evil and darkness all around us. And I, again, my particular Hymenot is not one of triumphalism, where I could point to the fact that the Black church is still the greatest source of civil engagement and organization, and source of hospitals and HBCUs and schools, eclipsing all other religious faiths combined in the Black community. And it has been that ever since the beginning of Black history in America, that it is still the organization in each Black community that makes a bigger impact across the Black community in various different ways. And that's not to not acknowledge the great contributions that other faiths have made. But as Brother pointed out earlier, 8 in 10 of us are Christians, and so it's made a bigger impact. But I don't want to actually argue from that perspective because, again, my understanding of what it means to be a Nazrawi in this world is not one of triumphalism, not one that measures the truth of our faith by how much practical success from a worldly standpoint we can have. Because actually the Bible teaches us that we can expect persecution and we can expect difficult things. And so I don't want to appeal to Bisrat. I don't want to appeal to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ on the basis that it will make everything better. Because it may not necessarily do that. Again, even though I could argue that because, again, the black church has made more impact in physical, tangible ways than any other black religion in this country. But the one I want to appeal to specifically is the theology that it allows us to empowers us to go throughout this world, again, with empowerment. And I would argue specifically that the Bisrat, especially as it has been practiced among African people, those of us from the continent and the diaspora, for 2,000 years, has more than other religious traditions given us a sense of cultural identity and given us a voice of resistance to the various oppressions that we have and still are actually facing. That it has done that from the beginning. I want to show that from an ancient and a modern standpoint. Again, one of the things that I want to point out is that in the ancient world, especially as I pointed out at the beginning, in the Roman Empire, and even in Mesopotamia and the Levant, there was definitely instances of anti-blackness and anti-black racism and sentiment and a disparaging of dark skin. And we even see that in the Bible where Moses' sister is disparaging his wife because she's black, and you actually see God punish her because of that. And so we see in the scriptures, and probably most pointedly in the Song of Songs 1:5 and 7, where the bride of Solomon is she's talking about her skin color and esteeming it, and actually rebuking and putting down colorism or any kind of disparaging of dark skin by saying, "I am dark yet beautiful, daughters of Jerusalem. Do not stare at me because I am dark. Why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends?" The Bible itself actually esteems blackness. And one interesting thing is the fact that black skin is the only skin color that is specifically highlighted in the Bible. You will not see any other people group or any other racial group where their skin color is particularly pointed out. You don't see people talking about, kind of Middle Eastern or Persian or Greco-Roman or any other ethnic groups, but it's only with black people, only with Ethiopians, only with people of African descent, which again, that means black, is skin color particularly pointed out. And it's done so in a positive way, saying that this is a good thing. And again, these are depictions of ancient Ethiopian manuscripts. This particular book is from the 5th century. And notice again, the black and the proudly African features that are depicted in Ethiopian iconography, where you have Jesus and Mary and angels and apostles that are all drawn proudly with African features, right? The idea of this white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus that looks like Thor or like Captain Jack Sparrow is completely foreign to this world. And yes, it is an image that has been used for oppression for a long time. But as I've said multiple times today, that is not the particular expression of Christianity that is biblical or that I ascribe to. But there is this tradition, and I have to push back a bit on the comment that was made earlier, where it says, where I'm sharing with you all today an ancient term called Bisrat. Let's say it one more time, Bisrat. It's okay to pronounce that because that is actually your ancestry. That is the only African languages that has its own writing system that is still alive today. Whereas most people on the continent, unfortunately, use European writing systems. So it's deeply lamentable to me to have a pushback be that nobody calls it that. Why doesn't anybody call it that? Because white supremacy is so extensive. But that is completely inaccurate because, as I said, this is an ancient term that you can find in text that goes back to the 4th century when, again, Ethiopia freely embraced Christianity as its dominant state religion. This is not a new thing. I'm not telling you guys a new word today. And so, in fact, the fact that nobody says it is actually part of the problem. But I think a lot of my Kemetic brothers and sisters would understand that part of what it means, and I appreciate the ways that you are doing this for a lot of our people in our communities, going back and reclaiming. But then we can't then disparage and say, well, nobody calls it that, so then therefore we say, actually, there is a Christian nation that's been Christian for 1,700 years that's been using that word, and it's in ancient manuscripts. Not only that, but not only in Ethiopia, but again, when you look at early African history in Egypt, in North Africa and Carthage, in Nubia, and in Ethiopia, when you look at history from the time, starting from the time that Bisrat comes into these places, it's freely embraced. Nobody forces it on them. The white man does not force it on them. But these African nations freely embrace Christianity as their religion. And from that point on, the majority of literature that comes from these places is Christian in nature. It's Nazrawi. If you want to just study African history during this time period, from the 1st century up until going forward in Egypt and in Nubia and in Axum, you will find Christian literature left and right. Whether you want to look at Ge'ez literature or Nubian literature or Coptic Egyptian literature, it's going to be predominantly Christian. Christianity, Bisrat, literally gave us languages. It gave us literature. African literature from the first up until even way before the colonial period, Christianity was synonymous with African literature. You couldn't separate the two. They went hand in hand. And not only that, but architecture as well. There was unique styles of architecture in the churches of Lalibela and in the monasteries in Dongola and all throughout Nubia and Egypt. Unique styles of Bisrat that not only were different than the dominant oppressive Roman Christianity, but also preceded it. And this is something that has given what I'm talking about, Africans, a sense of identity and pride. One example that we see of this, and another thing, this is one of my questions that I'd like to propose if you could speak to, Brother Jabari, in your rebuttal. One thing that I haven't seen, one of the few things that I haven't seen, one of the two main things that I haven't seen or I would like to see more response to that I'm putting forward that makes the idea that Christianity is a white man's religion, that it's forcing upon us is the totality of the story, makes that claim untenable. It makes it impossible to hold to that idea is two particular things. And one of them that I'd like you to respond to is that I haven't heard a response to is the fact that that Nazrawi in Egypt were resisting the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire came in to Egypt and attempted to impose their own theology and literally kidnapped and murdered and tortured Egyptian Nazrawi. And so I'd like to just see what in response to that fact, the fact that, again, Nazrawi were in Egypt and were being persecuted by the Roman Empire, as well as in Nubia. And this is an example of that. The life of Daniel of Scatus talks about the Roman Emperor Justinian, who is seen as kind of the dominant Byzantine emperor, and he is going throughout the Roman Empire and in Egypt and Syria and the places where black and brown people mainly live, and is enforcing Roman theology, the theology that Jesus is one person in two natures, the one that many Arabian and Syrian Egyptian Christians rejected, and was trying to enforce it. And there's an Egyptian monk named Daniel of Scatus. Scatus is in the Wadi Natrun. In Egyptian, it's called Shihate. And this is the story where he talks about Justinian coming in and oppressing, saying, and it was at that time that the impious Justinian, this is the Roman emperor, became emperor, he who was polluted and terrorized the entire world and the Catholic Church in every place. He endeavored to enforce the accursed faith of the defiled Council of Chalcedon everywhere and scattered the beautiful flocks of Christ. He chased the Orthodox bishops and archbishops from their thrones, and the impious Justinian was not satisfied with this, but also disseminated the impious tome of Leo, which the impious Council of Chalcedon had accepted. He propagated it everywhere that lay under his control in order to make everyone subscribe to it. When it was brought to Egypt, a great disturbance occurred among all the Orthodox faithful who were in the land of Egypt. And it was brought to the holy mountain of Scatus in order that our holy fathers might subscribe to it. Notice all of the different parallelisms here going on, that Egypt is being presented as the source of orthodoxy and the source of a unique expression of Christianity. This makes this idea that there was this dominant Christian history that was put on people untenable, because in the 400s there was deep strife and controversy between the churches of Egypt and the Roman Empire, where the Roman Empire was enforcing itself upon Egyptian and Syrian and Arabian Christians. So and they were resisting it, and still do to this day. The Egyptian and Ethiopian and Armenian churches still do not have communion with the Roman Catholic Church because of this particular schism. and they preceded it. So again, this is just one of those examples. Another example that shows again, this one shows again about how the Egyptian language itself was a marker of resistance and a marker of African Egyptian pride and for the Christians. This is when Arabic is starting to become the dominant language, and there's a monk, an Egyptian monk named Samuel of Kalamon, and in his text called the Apocalypse of Samuel of Kalamon, this is written in the 10th century, where he is trying to encourage Egyptians to resist speaking Arabic so that they can continue to speak the Egyptian language because, and notice this, because the Egyptian language is considered to be one and the same with Christianity. It says they will abandon this language, meaning Coptic, to speak Arabic and to worship in it to the point that we can no longer recognize them as Christians, but they will be taken for Berbers. Truly I say to you, my children, that those who give up the names of saints to give their children foreign names, those who act this way will be excluded from the blessing of the saints, and anyone who dares to speak the language of the Hegira, that's another kind of phrase for Arabic, inside the temple, that one will deviate from the ordinances of our holy fathers. Again, and also this is written in Coptic and Arabic, and the word for temple is actually Urpa, which is actually the Egyptian word that was used for temple in the traditional religion that then was used for a church. Because again, as we've said, this is another example of the ways that Christians embraced a lot of their ancestry and their history and rejected some of it, but continue to embrace a lot of it. And this is another example that shows how the language itself, again, if you look at Egyptian literature, if you just study Egyptian literature from the 1st century going forward until the 12th century, you will find Christian literature. Christianity, Bisrat, gave Africans a voice. It gave us literature. It gave us architecture. I want to show one more example of that from the modern period, from the ancient, then move to the modern period. Well, a lot of Petros.
Stop calling it Egypt. You're insulting us. It's Kemet. Stop calling it Egypt. That's a foreign word. It doesn't exist on any monument in any papyrus. You're insulting us. Call it by its proper name and call Yeshua by his name. His name is not Jesus. His name is Yeshua.
Okay, Elder. Just so that we respect you as an elder, we want to also respect the debate and give everyone their time and disagreement on that. Then let's go back to the 5-minute mark, because that's when the outburst began.
All right. But, yeah, I'd be happy to talk with anybody afterwards if anybody has any pushback or questions. So this is an example. This is an excerpt from a text that was written in the 16th century when the Roman Catholic Church attempted to come into Ethiopia, which had been a nation of Nazrawi for over 1,000 years, and attempted to bring, just like they were doing. This is right after they built those slave castles and brought in Roman Christianity into Africa. They attempted to come into places where it hadn't been before. And then they even came into Axum, where it had already been for 1,000 years, and said, hey, we brought the Bisrat to you. We brought the gospel. We've come to make you Christians. And a lot of the Ethiopians saying, well, we've been Christian for over 1,000 years, so we're good. We don't really need it. But what happened was the king of Ethiopia, Sasanius, actually embraced Roman Catholic religion as the dominant religion of Ethiopia. And that lasted for a few minutes because most of the Ethiopians rejected that because, again, they had their own Bisrat, which is not new. This is an ancient term. This is an ancient form of Christianity that preceded Roman Catholic Christianity. And they revolted and said, no, we don't want this. We don't want this European. Look at the words that she uses. And actually, it was a woman, monastic figure named Olata Petros, who actually defied not only her king, but also defied her husband, who went along with the king. And then she was chased out of her home, but she led a monastic movement and ended up galvanizing the Ethiopian people and resisted and rejected European Catholicism. And the son of Sasanius, Fasilides, actually returned Ethiopia back to its original Christianity, to its Bisrat. And that's where the point where this text comes in, where it's a celebration of the expulsion of European Christianity. And this is a picture of her monastery. And actually, the analogy that she uses in this text is talking about the freedom, as birds, like the African Christians now have from European Christianity. She says, "Blessed be our Lord God, who did not deliver us into the treacherous net of the Europeans. Indeed, our souls fled like birds from a hunting net. Now the net has been torn asunder, and we are safe." And so this is the I'm going to just wrap it up here, but this is the spirit that has been among African people, specifically the Bisrat spirit of African people from the beginning, that continued into the United States, where we have one of the largest slave rebellions in South Carolina, the Stono Rebellion, where African slaves in South Carolina fought against white slave owners, and they were actually Christians. They were Nasrawi from the Congo and had been even before they came over in slavery and fought against this. And then you have examples like Phyllis Wheatley, who in her poetry, in her public address to the Earl of Dartmouth, is renouncing slavery and European Christianity. Same thing with Oleada Equiano, who also talks very vehemently against the how the liberal devise liberal things, but by liberal things that how they shall stand. They can say with pious Job, "Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor?" Frederick Douglass, one of my favorite quotes that really exemplifies, again, how from the very beginning, just like Walata Petros and just like Shenouda and just like Daniel of Scatus, back on the continent, even here, those of us that put our faith in Yeshua and those of us that put our faith in the Bisrat, who became Nasrawi, like Frederick Douglass, still understood the vast distinction between the oppressive white Christianity of the land and that that was being practiced among black people. And so notice what he says here. He says, "What I have said respecting and against religion, I mean strictly to apply to the slave-holding religion of this land, and with no possible reference to Christianity proper." Notice Douglas's word that there's a difference between the Christianity of this land and Christianity proper. Again, what I'm defending today is Bisrat proper. For between the Christianity of this land and the Christianity of Christ, I recognize the widest possible difference. So wide that to receive, this part is powerful, that to receive the one as good, pure, and holy is of necessity to reject the other as bad, corrupt, and wicked. To be the friend of the one is of necessity to be the enemy of the other. I love the pure, peaceable, and impartial Christianity of Christ. I therefore hate the corrupt, slave-holding, women-whipping, cradle-plundering, partial, and hypocritical Christianity of this land. Indeed, I can see no reason but the most deceitful one for calling the religions of this land Christianity. So when I'm distinguishing myself today from Christianity and saying that there is a Bisrat tradition among African people, it's not a new idea that I thought up today. I'm introducing to you a word that is 1,700 years old. And I'm talking to you today about a faith that has brought our people through a mighty long way and will continue to do so.
Time. Brother Jabari, his rebuttal.
I'm not quite sure how to rebut that because the topic was actually, I didn't hear much on topic. And I don't want to go into what I disagree with, that I've actually clearly said in other portions. We are here to talk about plans or the things that we can actually do in our traditions that will move us forward. And so I think it's of critical importance for us to talk about that. It's a really important topic because a lot of times all we do is we argue. We don't actually talk about what we have to do tomorrow, other than be upset and have high blood pressure because we were arguing. And so it's really important for us to figure out how to move forward together. And I think that what I'm trying to say here is I'm hoping that we find ways to move forward together. Maybe you will not actually come into the Kemetic tradition. Maybe I won't return to Christianity. But does that mean that our relationships have to actually be destroyed? Does it mean that we won't be able to work together? Because somehow I find other people on the planet working together even when their traditions are different. And it's Africans that are now fighting each other over things that we ought not fight about. And so I really hope that we'll figure out how to do that. I truly hope I figure out how to do that. I have no enmity for you because you are followers of the Bible. None. None. I do think that there are some things that we should talk about with regard to how we got it, how it was put together, who gave it to us, what we were doing before. I think those are valid issues for us to discuss. And so I know that it's not necessarily something that makes a lot of people comfortable. It doesn't even make me comfortable. Do you think I wanted to actually be on a panel that says, is Christianity the white man's religion? with my face on the internet saying, oh, that must be what he's saying. This is a tough conversation. I struggle having it with my own parents, the people who birthed me. And when I bring to them some of the things that I've brought to you today, they are uncomfortable. And that's not my goal. I don't want to make why would I make my parents uncomfortable? But I once again have to say that if we actually look backward, we can go forward. It's not just Sankofa. We even see it in Kemet. We see it in the image of the Kepper, the beetle. Some of you probably know it as the scarab. But in actuality, that wonderful symbol of transformation is an animal that looks backward in order to go forward. I think that's another reason why our Kemetic ancestors use that particular image. So without going too far into what my brother Dr. Bantu has said, because it's going to take us into another discussion of things that we've already discussed, I just want to say, let's find ways that we are going to be one people again. And let's find ways not to see each other other than the wonderful Africans that we've been. Even on the continent, there are other traditions. And that's another part of the conversation that we need to have. I'm not talking about other traditions that have been imported, forced on our people. I'm talking about other traditions that existed amongst people that are there. And so we have had to figure out how to work together for a long time. In ancient Kemet, every city had a different temple consecrated to a different deity. Now, they understood they weren't talking about a literal story, so it wasn't as difficult for them not to have battles and fights around it. That doesn't mean they never did, but it means that it was easier for them not to argue, because they never said Asar was a literal person. They never said Ast was a literal person. They never said Heru was a literal person. Half of them actually are amalgamations of animals and humans. No one was saying that those were actually people that existed. And so in some ways, even though there were different temples that had different practices, they were able to find a way to have a seamless mosaic. That's what we have to do. I want to be able to leave here and work with you. I hope that I have not bruised too many feelings today, because I know that, especially in a city like Philadelphia, I'm from Harlem, but we're in Philadelphia all the time, my queen. I would love this city. And we want to be able to come back and have difficult conversations and fun conversations with you in this space. That's the only way we're going to be able to do more. So with that, I'm going to cede the rest of the time. I don't want to go into the rest of the conversation that we've already had. In some ways, to me, that would feel like we were rehashing something. And I think that we've had a spirited, strong, comprehensive conversation. There were times that I felt that we could have had more time. That's fair. But you never have enough time when you're debating. That's just how it feels. So I want to thank my brother, Dr. Bantu, for coming in here and really expressing his ideas about the Christianity. Now, I don't mean any disrespect. I'm still seeing this as a newer tradition. But it's a wondrous thing that he's described. And I hope that if you're going to remain in this house, you do so with the things that he's describing. Because I understand that I cannot do what we cannot do. And that's of critical importance. So thank you very much for having me. I love you, family, Christian and Kemetic. Let's find a way to do more. Hetepu.
All right. Well, thank you, Brother Jabari. Again, I echo what you're saying in the spirit of it is not my intention at all to hurt any feelings, and I personally have enjoyed, and I'm sensing that you have as well, the amicable debate, and we can disagree without being violently disagreeable. And I think this is a really, for all of us as black people, being at Nazrawi, Christian, Kemetic, whatever, I think this is a great testimony to our community as a whole of what it can look like to have inter-religious, inter-theological debates without being in, anybody getting buck with it, anybody getting, getting violent or anything like that. So I thank you so much, Brother Jabari, for having a respectful dialogue with me. And again, and I sense from you too that it's okay if we disagree, and we point those things out. And it doesn't. I agree with you as well that our disagreements do not preclude any ability to work together. I have already and will continue to work with Kemetic brothers and sisters and Hebrew Israelites and 5%ers and Muslims and people from all over because there are some things that are affecting us as black people, regardless of what your faith is, that we have to unify and we have to come together on. And I completely agree with that. And so I want to, with that said, I do want to argue a little bit more. I got, this is the rebuttal period, but that's okay. But that's okay because we ain't mad. We good. Like I said, we're gonna get each other's phone numbers and we're gonna chop it up and we're gonna go get coffee because like I said, I personally really enjoy these kind of conversations. So with that, I'll just throw a few more comments out and hope to continue the conversation. I seriously hope not only that me and the brother, but that you all will get each other's emails and that you will build. I hope relationships are formed out of this event, and you will get to know one another and build relationships because it's so good to talk to people who think differently than us and not just be in our echo chambers with people who think the same way we do. And so I hope that we continue to do that. And again, have honest dialogue. We're respectful, but honest dialogue. So the one thing I'll say that I disagree with is the idea that what was shared in my presentation was not on point. Again, I'll repeat again that and then it'll kind of end to my final comment. I'll repeat that my particular answer to the question of, Bisrat or Kemet, who has the answer for Black America? My answer is what I presented to you. Because as I said, as much as I value, and this might be a window into a lot of Nazrawi, certainly myself, and what I understand the scriptures to teach, and this is, and I don't mean any disrespect, so I want to learn more about one another's faith, but I don't know if this is understood on the other side about how we see things. But again, we follow a God that told us not to expect worldly success in this world. And that in fact, we can expect the opposite. When we witness and testify to his kingdom, we can actually expect things to not always work out. That doesn't mean we don't work for it. That doesn't mean that we don't do things to try to make community better, but we don't expect that it's going to go our way. And my argument was that one of the things that I think is so damaging about dominant white Christianity, and I think this goes back to Constantine, is that there is a theology built into it that's actually the opposite, that expects that this is our country, this is our land. We want prayer in the schools. I love praying. I pray to Jesus every day, right? But I don't want to force other people to believe in what I believe in, right? But there is an assumption in European Christianity that's been there since Constantine that we are going to, by this sign, we're going to conquer. And I don't see that in scriptures. I see that our citizenship is in heaven. And so I actually think that's a downside to much of the white European Christianity, that I'm arguing that on the continent from ancient times and also today, that theology has been with us and has seen us through. So that is my answer to the question of why I see Bisrat as the answer for black people. One of the reasons why I think it's the answer for us is that history has shown that it's given us literature. It's given us language. It's given us language of resistance. And it's given us a theology to continue to resist, and also being able to bear under and continue to trust in God through hard times. And doesn't have a sense of I'm actually hoping for, or my metric or rubric for success, or that my religion is efficacious, is political or economic or worldly success in this world. That's not something we're necessarily expecting, even though we work for it and hope for it and understand that it is part of God's kingdom. So we don't just say, well, let's just wait until the afterlife and just deal with this stuff now. Not at all. But it's, again, understanding that we have to work for justice, but knowing that it might not necessarily happen. And that is why I answered the way that I did, and that's why I see it that way. And that's also why I want to leave with a couple of questions that are, in my opinion, this is a debate, so we can even debate about what we're debating or why we're debating about it. But again, there was the comment that this was a rehashing. But again, the questions that I want not only my brother, but also anybody from the Kemetic community or other communities to continue to answer, that I would like to in the rebuttal, finally put out that tie into this argument. Because part of my argument is that Bisrat did not come from white people, and it's not a copy, and so it leads into this. And it's because of that it is the answer. That is one reason why it is the answer for us, because it's not from the white man, because it's not a copy, because it has given us a sense of identity and a voice for resistance. That is why I'm saying that. So the questions I want to leave with that weren't addressed, but maybe you didn't feel like that was on topic, which is fine. I disagree. But one of the questions I put out last time that I was hoping for a response for and still waiting for is, how do we see Christianity as the white man's religion when early Egyptian Christians were fighting the Roman Empire and were resisting them? That's question number one that I have not heard a good answer to. The second question that I would like an answer to is, how do we continue to maintain the idea that Christianity came from the Roman Empire when there was Christianity in the Persian Empire and in India and in China that had nothing to do with the Roman Empire? And again, the reason why I disagree that is irrelevant is because of the point that I'm making, that this is part of our identity, that Bisrat gives you an identity that allows you to be your full self in Christ, in the Messiah. And that is one of the reasons why I am arguing that Bisrat, that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the answer for us, and how it has been the answer for us for 2,000 years. But that's actually not the most important reason. That's one reason that I've been emphasizing for 20 minutes. But the main reason that, and I'm not speaking as a historian anymore, because that's how I have to approach this, because that's what I do. But right now, I'm just speaking as a Nazrawi. I'm just speaking as a follower of Yeshua. The main reason that actually I would say trumps everything else I said in this topic, why the Bisrat of Yeshua of Nazareth is the real answer, not just for black people, but for everybody, is he is the only one who can save us from sin and death. He is the only one who can save us from ourselves. I can't do it. We can't do it. None of us can do it. And most other religious traditions teach that it's on you, that you have to do it, and that your deeds will be weighed depending on how good of a life you led. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't have the ability to live up to God's standards. I don't have the ability to be like him. And so it took him taking on flesh and taking my punishment, our punishment, that all of us deserve. Whether we're on top in this world or whether we're on the bottom, all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. All of us have offended him. And all of us are lost without him. And it takes him coming down, taking on flesh, fully God and fully man, bearing my sin punishment, then rising again in all power, so that I might be also risen again and live an abundant life with him, not just in the life to come, but in this life right here. And I have not seen that promise to me, and I have not seen any other God be good on that promise other than the Lord Jesus Christ. And I can give you all the history all day. I love doing it. But at the end of the day, all that history stuff I just said really pales in comparison to the power of the Bisrat of Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. God bless you.
We're gonna now. When you raise your hand, I'm gonna point to you and you ask your question. So I'm gonna go bat out, bat out, bat out, bat out. First, this sister right here.
And in the Bible, it states that everything God made is good. He made man, he made woman.
Question,
that's very
sister.
good. My question, in your house, since you guys are definitely equal, who has the final say?
This is what I'm referring to. There is no final say. Maybe you think that's messy, because I can't say, why are you raising your voice in my house? I don't get to say that. She is my equal. And by the way, you should know that is Dr. Anika Daniels Osaze. She might actually be better than me. When I was a young husband, there were times when she would say, well, listen, I'm going to handle this part of the finances. I'm going to do this. I was like, nah, I'm the man. I got to do that. And then at the end, I would say, how come I don't have any money left and I have so much more to do in the month? Maybe on the sneak tip, now I'm talking to y'all because I'm from Harlem and you from Philly, right? Let me pretend that she could do it because I said she could do it. She never had that problem. This sister here can make $1 out of 15 cents. Why should I have the final say if she is more talented than me in some areas? We have to come to an agreement. There is no final say. That is a relationship. That is my aunt. So I get that question a lot. And I think that people think that it makes it more difficult. But actually it makes it easier because now we have to build a stronger relationship. So when she says something, sometimes she don't even have to say everything she needs to say. Because we've built enough of a relationship that I understand that she is excellent in certain areas, and she understands I'm excellent in other areas. We are partners. And if I had time, I'd show you some images. Because you'll see gigantic images of Kemetic kings and queens sitting on a throne together with their eyes meeting. Because the commentary is, this woman, I'm the most powerful man in the world. This woman is my equal. That's how we do it.
Cool. Before we go to the next question, I think she was asking not an equality question, but a functionality question. But I'm gonna go to the next one because I think that's what she was asking. Yes. Cool. Perfect. Cool. That's the answer. They work together. Yes. No, that's no disrespect to that. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you both for your time. My question is, what are both of your testimonies and experiences that brought you to your faith and beliefs?
Now, that could be a long answer, so just so that we can get as many questions out, brothers, let's sort of do that in 1 minute.
Yep.
Each. 2 minutes each.
Yeah, I know, right? Thank you. Real question. So for me, I received the Lord Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior when I was very young, when I was like 7, 8 years old. And I was also very much, like many of us, inundated with white pictures of Jesus and white and Europeanized expressions of Christianity and worship and ways of doing church and all these other kind of things that I always felt like did not gel with who I was growing up on the west side of St. Louis. That it didn't, what I was being presented with did not match my reality. And on the flip, I didn't see my reality being done in an expressly Christian way. Right? Because even in my community, I felt like even the churches with people who looked like me, that people my age and who dressed and looked like I was, weren't even welcome in those places. So it was like a double whammy of feeling like me and Christianity can't mix together. And I felt like, and then it was through the Holy Spirit revealing through others and through his word, like, that's my theme passage. That's my testimony passage of do not call unclean what I've called clean. That I felt that I had rejected, there was a place where I felt like I had to reject who I was to be a Christian. And then the Lord told me, no, that's a lie from white supremacist Christianity and even self-hating black Christianity that must be rejected, and you have to own who you are. And that's really my passion, is just to share that with other believers and folks as well.
Well, our story sounds somewhat similar. I was actually a very, very serious adherent to the Christian tradition when I was much younger. My family is Christian. Most of them are still Christian. And I attended Christian schools. I had Christian friends. I don't denounce them because my tradition is different now, but I think I came to this initially through history. I have an Africana Studies degree. I started studying the history of our people, and I thought what I was reading made a lot of sense, and then the dreams happened. I'll never forget being with the sister that predates this queen here. And I had a dream that a bull was chasing me. Wherever I was in my house, the bull was chasing me. And I would say to my mom, "Don't you see the bull?" She said, "I don't see a bull." My brother, "I don't see the bull." This tradition is for me, not necessarily for them. That was the message I had to receive. Of course, when I woke up, she said, "You got demons on you, baby. You got demons on you." I knew that was wrong. So that as I continued to read, it became clear to me that I was not just being called for history, but I was being called for practice. And so from there, I realized that there were some folks practicing in New York. I was in upstate New York for school. I ran down there, studied with them for 8 years, and then I was introduced to that man. And that's 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. I say with no shortness that that is the man that has held me stand upright. That his walk is the walk I choose to live and lead. And so now that I'm a Kemetic high priest, I have my own initiates. Some of them are in the room. I'm the equivalent of a pastor too. And so we have a very large, I'll say, ministry so that you can understand what I'm saying. And I truly believe that it works in the lives of those people who are part of my tradition and part of my shrine.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We have, so these are the order questions. I got 2 here. I have 1 in the back that's coming, this order, that order. So I'm gonna come here, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's where we're going next. Yeah.
In regard to the copying statement, according to, well, the question is, what Egyptian text, pyramid, Shabaka text, do you find the birth of Horus being a virgin? Because the 2 texts, one argues that Horus was created by Ptah as a solar deity with the rest of the deities. But the pyramid text, I think 156 argues or says that he was birthed as a result as a phallic from the recovered phallus.
Sum up your question real quick so he can clearly, you understand what he's saying, brother? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure we maximize time. We want to make sure clear questions. Yes, sir.
It's a simple answer. I don't have time to actually give you exact passages, but you should understand that you will see Heru born without normal, natural conception in all of the texts that you mentioned. So in some instances, you might actually think that there are contradictions. But the reason, because some of them will also say that he was created by Ptah. You're correct about that. But you have to understand that the Kemetic tradition is not literal. So that in one chapter you can say he's created by Ptah, in another chapter you can say he came from his mother without his father. There's no contradiction there. You're reading one section and trying to do a gotcha. But I'm going to tell you that what you'll see in every single one of those texts, the Merkuti texts that are called the pyramid texts, the coffin text or Nebang text, the Rayupert Hemeruangir, you will hear him being raised in that way. And then also in other stelae, you will see that. You should look at the Metternich stelae. If you're really serious about this, you should take my class on the history of ancient Kemet, and I'll show it to you.
Right, this young lady. Question.
Yes. No disrespect. When it came to the question of what's next for Black America, a lot of us feel like you guys did not put forth actual practical next steps for Kemetic as well as Christianity. Can you both do that briefly, like very specific next steps for Black America from your respective traditions?
2 minutes per answer.
You can go if you like. You can. Okay. Well, I think I did answer it. I hope that you don't think that I have a plan to rescue Black people. I don't. And I don't think the Kemetic community or the Christian community has a plan to rescue Black people. Now, let me say to you that there are certainly some good ideas and arguments that are coming forth in both communities. My argument to you is that in order for us to address the biggest need, we have to know who we are. And in order for us to know who we are, we have to go back to literally 40,000 years of African history. That is what I said. Because we actually have I know it feels like we don't have resources. That's because we spend money with everybody in our community. In fact, there are people in my community in Harlem. I have seen 3 generations of folks from China who own that restaurant. Once they get good, they're like, I'm good, I'll pass it on. They are making bank in our neighborhoods. We have the resources. It's not about how we get resources, it's about how we use our understanding of ourselves to use those resources.
Hello, Tessa. It's funny, I actually kind of feel like I'm kind of similar to Brother Jabari on this one. In a different way, though, I'll push back just a little bit in that, and this might even be an internal maybe disagreement, even among those of us who are Nasrawi, but I feel like those of us that are believers, sometimes we want to jump to the practical before we focus on who God says he is and who he says who he is in relation to us and how we are to position ourselves in relationship to his kingdom rule. And I feel sometimes we want to jump, okay, what am I supposed to do? Like, even when we preach, it's like, just what do I want to do? And we don't jump to who God says he is. And so what I argued was that my argument in response to that question is I feel like one of the best things about Bisrat, especially for black folks, is that it gives us a rhetoric and a framework for how to deal with persecution. And that's why I specifically said I don't want to talk about schools and hospitals and daycares and nonprofits getting started in our community. Those things are good and we should do them. But I don't want to measure the efficaciousness of our faith based on what it does for us materially only. Because first and foremost, who we are is witnesses to the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And so I'm saying that, especially for those of us who are being oppressed, we can connect with the Palestinian Jews who are also being oppressed. And we're trusting in Yeshua, even in the face of Roman oppression, that we can connect with that. That being said, I will say, I'm not saying that practicality is not important. I'm just saying that I wanted to answer that way because that's what the Lord put on my heart to say, and that's what I feel like is actually most important for us. Amen. But I will say practically that we can, talking about a voice of resistance, that we can, especially in the black church, begin to even more so connect. I'm right now involved with a research with the Louisville Institute where we're looking at faith-based black congregations working towards justice, especially in this day where Black Lives Matter is really connected from the black church in a big way. So I would say that is a practical thing that we can do to bring that voice of resistance back inside of our pulpits on Sundays.
Thank you, brother. We're going to come right here to this brother, then we're coming to Brother Adam.
I have a question. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and we have many different people and many different faiths. The Jewish community, the Islamic community. I was involved in the church for 22 years, St. Paul Community Baptist Church in Brooklyn with Reverend Dr. Johnny Ray Youngblood. We built 4,000 Nehemiah homes. My question is, what has happened to the black church and its ability to pool their resources? I'm also a Garveyite. I know history. In the early 1900s, it was the black church with Garvey that built up our communities. It's a fact that black churches still get more money in contribution than banks. It's nice to wait for the by and by, but where we live, gentrification is running away like a rabid wolf. And all I'm asking is, can you all speak to your colleagues about duplicating what other churches have done? People like Jeremiah Wright in Chicago and several other places, because our people are suffering. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Before they answer that question, I just want to let y'all know I'm burning like fire with every comment and question because I want to talk so bad, but I'm trying to be the moderator. So y'all all pray for me in multiple tongues right now because I'm burning, 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 burning. Help me! Y'all answer the questions. Lord have mercy.
That's got to be hard. That's got to be hard. I was thinking that myself, too. You want to go?
You want to go? Asking what happened to the black church, so either one of y'all can answer that.
Right. I mean, I think it's a fair question. I think that there are multiple ways to look at it. I think there are still and have been copious amounts of efforts that the black church has done, especially in the fight of gentrification. A lot of times black churches are the number one target of gentrification, of trying to maintain their buildings with congregations that are trying to fight these forces. And so sometimes we are the target of that as well. And I think that there is, to the point I just made, a rhetoric of activism that does need to be resurged. In Houston, Texas, where I live, it was a black church, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, that effectively ended segregation for the city of Houston, Texas. And where I'm from in St. Louis, it is a black church that has actually put the only bank for a 5-mile radius in North St. Louis was done by a black church. So there are lots of efforts happening. But again, I always want to caution us against triumphalism. And so we need to do these things, and there are things going on, and there are things we need to continue to work at. So I would say it's a multifaceted thing that many black churches are doing and are actually addressing. But I think it could be done even more and even better.
I'm going to say this really quickly. I want to say that the direction he takes in saying that we should not measure our traditions by what we get would be healing for what I see going on in mostly the black church, but certainly in other traditions as well, with people who are asking for new Learjets, who are fleecing the community while it burns in front of them. We're seeing that. Now, I don't want to give you the impression I'm saying that all Christian pastors, all Christian churches, that's not what I'm saying. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I'm saying that we need to now say, how do we do, rather than because you're sitting up there looking nice, they expect me to be wearing Prada, brother, one pastor said. In a church, in a court deposition, I got to look good for my... We're seeing a lot of it, and we have to root it out wherever it comes.
Brother Adam.
Hey, how's it going? I'm trying to squeeze this into that 10 seconds right quick. So my question is for Brother Jabari. The fact is that the vast majority of modern scholarship on the historicity of Jesus are in sharp disagreement with you, in that the scholars from various worldviews affirm that Jesus was a historical person and not a myth. And that's based on sources like Tacitus, Josephus, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, so forth. My question is, while the claims you made are popular regurgitations of the debunked Zeitgeist documentary, can you provide primary source evidence and scholarship to support your poorly evidenced claims that Jesus is being merely mythical? Thanks.
Can I say something? First of all, I did not even call Jesus a myth on this stage. Maybe he watching YouTube or something. That wasn't... Now, I do say that Jesus is a myth. So he came here watching Sonetta saying, you know what, I'm going to get him. You're going to be disappointed. I don't have time to respond to that, brother. I'm going to tell you, Tacitus, Joseph, there are many issues with those citations. Why does a Jew call Jesus the Christ? When you look closely at it, as they now are able to do, it seems like something was erased. Eusebius was known as a well-known plagiarizer. You have to just understand that when you also see in a tradition that many of the things that are being applied to one person have happened before, older, in other places, and then this new tradition then appropriates the spaces, the traditions, the symbols. You don't have to be a zoologist to know that when it quacks, it's a duck. And so that is really what I need to say. I do not have the time to go in this extensively.
I understand.
I have done that on Sonetta. Maybe you wanted to chat with me about it when you saw a video. We can still chat.
Yeah.
I did not call Jesus a myth up here.
Gotcha.
Of course I implied it. It's what I've not just implied it in other places. I have said it. I'm just saying that it's not here. And if you want me to cover that, Pastor, you're going to have to bring me back for an hour.
Yeah, we'll
because
down,
I'll
brother.
go through the sources. I hope you didn't think I was going to do that in 1 minute.
That's good.
I just gave you an example.
We're good. We're going to go to the next. We'll go to the next question. I added 5 minutes just so that we can get into more questions. I wanted to come to this, I believe this brother right here was the next brother, and then we come here.
So I have a question for Dr. Bantu. You spoke about Bisrat as if it was a different tradition than Christianity. So other than your belief, what are the tangible differences between what you do and either the Roman Catholic or the Protestant Reformation, knowing that Protestants is Roman Catholics as well?
I think I kind of answered that question like for the last 3 hours because, and I mean, as I just said here, Frederick Douglass is talking about the Christianity of this land. So what I've tried to do in various ways for 3 hours now is to chart out a course where there is Bisrat, there is like the Bisrat of Yeshua HaMashiach, and then there is Christianity, this oppressive thing, that are two different things that I've shown how one has been oppressive, the other has been, liberating. One of them has been colonizing and enforcing one identity. The other has been embracing one's own identity, one's own language. And then even today, one of them has been in support of slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration. The other one has been fighting against those things. So that's kind of where I'm, just to answer it again, that's where I'm seeing these two different strands. And the question you asked is, what do they do differently? That's what they do differently.
No, I'm asking literally, as far as practices,
Yeah.
dogma, ritual.
We can talk offline about that because I think he gave his answer. He gave his answer. Let's go right here.
Good evening, my brothers. Y'all both did really well. I applaud
Dua,
both of you.
thank you.
All right, now this question is going to be for both of you all. Because we know that, in our greatness over in Kemet, Africans went a lot of places.
Hold on, brother. Please no videoing right now. Y'all can take picture real quick, but please no videoing y'all lives, all of that. Just respect that for me. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, everywhere we went, we spread knowledge. We left knowledge. We didn't try to dominate like the European did. You know, it was all about leaving knowledge. So my question for both of you all, what can be done today to embrace each other's spiritual ideas without being a sectarian? Because that's the only way Egypt was like the New York of back then. Everybody came there and shared information. How are we going to do that now? How are we going to come together, hold on to your spiritual belief, but not be a sectarian?
You're allowing me to? Okay. I think that some of what we're doing today is hopefully that. I hope that we'll have chances where we'll have tough conversations but still remain in love, talk about things that we can do together. I do think it's hard sometimes when, and for those of you who have seen my walk in the last 2 years, which has been very difficult, I have talked and debated with a lot of groups. I think that there are some things that some groups say that I think make working together difficult. If you say that Africans are cursed, I don't know how to recover from that. So there's some things that some groups say that are difficult, but I think that the wide majority of people are saying things that for the most part are not so diametrically opposed that we can't work together. And so we're going to have to build those things by actually meeting with each other. Instead of just saying, you're going to go there and I'll go here, we have to recognize that we're one community. By the way, neither of our communities are strong enough that we're living in different places. We still live together, right? We go to the same stores, the children go to the same schools. I mean, the reality is that now we have to have a dialogue. Some of that dialogue will not be comfortable. And I'm not saying that we should pretend that those dialogues don't exist. But we do have to say, well, now what? You African, I'm African, you oppressed, I'm oppressed, now what? So. Mm-hmm.
I would agree with what Brother Jabari said. I would say that I don't think this kind of gathering is very common. I don't know, maybe someone else is like, no, I do this every week. But like, for me, this is pretty rare to have a mixed crowd and have respected brothers that are debating things. So again, hats off to Epiphany, King Movement, and Strong Mahat. We're a part of something unique today. We need to do more of this. And it maybe not just having it be a binary. Let's throw a Hebrew Israelite in this conversation. It'd be really fun, right? And then let's have another conversation where there's like a Rastafarian and a practitioner of Yoruba religion and a Catholic. Like we're a diverse, nuanced, complex, beautiful people. And like we need to get together and we need to have debates. And dialogue too. I actually, again as an example, I actually ran in St. Louis an African-American interfaith dialogue that was full of all of these different religions I just named, but actually it wasn't a debate. I think there's time for this too. I love debate as long as it's respectful. We should debate, but also just dialogue. In this group I did, it was a different thing where it was like, actually we said in that space you're not allowed to debate, and all we did was come together each week and read one another's sacred texts. Whether it was the Book of the Dead, or the Bible, the Quran, all these different texts, and we would just learn. And so doing things like that, I would say debate, dialogue, and also partnership. We have to do things together that actually address some of the common needs in our community.
All right, this brother right here had a question. Right here, yes.
This question is for Dr. Bantu. I believe that you believe what you're saying is true. But one of the things that we have to do as a people is do our own research. In the spirit of being a scholar, if you're imparted with some new information, will you have the courage to go the opposite direction like Dr. Ray Hagan's, or will you still remain and be wrong and strong? Is if you impart some new information, what will you do?
No, that's a great question. For me, my faith in Christ is exactly that. It's faith. And so it's not built primarily on information or like history. And so so to answer your question, it depends on what it is. There are some things that I'm totally willing to, kind of change my mind about. And I have different views about baptism or about the millennium or about communion or all these different topics, political things that I'm completely willing to change my mind on. But there is no information on the face of this planet that would ever make me change my mind that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior.
Can I get a little bit of that?
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I thought it was for him. So
It was, but I want to just get a little bit of that. So it may be easier for someone who is in the Kemetic tradition to hear some of what you said, because I don't argue that the great mythos of ancient Kemet is literal. We speak in symbolism. And so I'm not going to say to you, my way of truth is Heru and Asar. I'm not going to say that, because Heru and Asar are spiritual symbolism. So that to some degree, it may be easier for me to sit and talk with people and than others. Because the other thing that happens sometimes, and I think I heard my brother say this too, sometimes what I hear Christians say is that their way is the only way. And that's a really difficult thing, folks. That's a really difficult thing. I mean, just historically, I mean, you know how many people lived on the planet before you are arguing Jesus came forth in the flesh? What happened to them? Are they sitting in purgatory waiting, and now they have a card they got to check yes or no, or they go to hell? This is a difficult thing. Your spiritual tradition is like a map. There are many different ways to get there. I am not arguing that you must be Kemetic in order to be saved, in order to go to heaven. In fact, in the Kemetic tradition, it's about what you do. That's why our heart is weighed. And so that is really where I think we should need to go.
We're going to go to Sister Kane right here.
How you doing? Brother Bantu, I wanted to know if you could speak more to the assumption that Christianity perpetuates misogyny, and if you could speak more to the equality of women in worth and value, but distinctions and functions between men and women within the Christian context.
So, I mean, even though some of us in here aren't believers, some of us aren't Christian in here, but a lot of us that aren't have familiarity with it. So probably most of us are familiar with the fact that Nasrawi are not united on that issue. There are differences, just like in the Kemetic movement. I'm sure there's differences, different groups that have different opinions. And so, but I would say for the most part, most people who believe in the Bisrat believe that both men and women are created equally in the image of God, and that both of them are equally fallen and in need of salvation, and also both of them are equally made right again in right relationship with God through faith in Jesus Christ. And that's what most of us believe. I think in terms of equality of value, and that's part of biblical faith, I think where some of us, even inside of the church, disagree is on those particular roles. And some of us do believe that there are roles that are particular to men and roles that are particular to women. And then some of us, like myself, believe actually that even within the church that men and women are equal in terms of what they're able to do and the offices that they can hold. And I know that people have different opinions about that. And so, and that you see the same diversity even in the early church, that you see examples where women are holding, especially in communities like Ethiopia, where there's a long tradition and history of queens, and even rooting their ancestry to a queen, that there is actually more evidence of female leadership, like I showed you well out the Petros. And in other contexts, there is more of kind of that, what's called sometimes complementarian theology. So, yeah.
Are you referencing the Kandakes when you're talking about that?
No, I'm talking about Queen in Acts.
Oh, that's one. You said queens.
Well, there's other ones as well. There's other queens referenced in Acts.
Okay, we're not going to start this again. But I really don't want to let them get away with that answer. That is not a sufficient answer. We're going to chop that one up later.
Sir, you have been talking about your brand of Christianity coming from Ethiopia, Kush. Am I right?
Well, he needs further down.
Well, let's not go by the Berlin Conference lines, okay? But then, if you are of Kush, that means that your father is Ham. So what are you doing in your uncle's house? Have you embraced the curse of Canaan to serve your uncles Shem and Japheth in their tent?
Yeah, I think that that accusation is rooted in a good question that we could address. And the curse of Ham is a myth, actually, not only of white supremacy, but also even of actually even before that, it gets into rabbinic literature in Palestine and in the Babylonian Talmud, this idea that Ham is cursed. So all that to say that we actually would have a different interpretation of that, that actually the curse that Noah pronounces upon his son Ham is actually fulfilled in the conquest of Canaan. And
see, he just said it.
So,
you heard him just say it.
So
cursed to serve his uncles Shem and Japheth in their time. Now, if you open the book between Malachi and Matthew, Malachi is the book of Shem, going back to Genesis.
I'm sorry, I'm off on this. I'm sorry, Elder. We'll chop it up. We'll chop it up, Elder. Thank you for that. Thank you, that. You know, let me explain why I give the elder room. The Bible says, "Do not rebuke an older man sharply, but appeal to him as a son to a father." So I'm appealing to you as a son to a father, no matter what faith you are. That's the command of Scripture. And so that doesn't mean we don't communicate. It's just I'm not authorized to rebuke him. All right, 1 and 2 right here. These are going to make these the last question. Last week. I'm sorry.
Were you still answering?
I'm sorry. I was talking to Jabari. My bad.
Yeah, that's on me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's my bad.
I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure everybody, you know, when they roll. But yeah, just to finish up what I was saying, that you know, I would just to answer your question, I would have a different interpretation of. So I would not see Bisrot as the house of Shem, or as the house of Japheth. That's not what I would see it as. And I would again, as I showed you, as I was arguing from this particular interpretation of the scriptures, that actually that Bisrot is for all people, and that also, going back into what I was saying earlier, actually, I would also, from a historical side, say that not all African people are descendants of Ham, especially when you look at Semitic people groups in East Africa.
Which verse? Did we say this? Okay, we're going to come here.
I'm feeling like
no, actually, these two brothers.
I'm feeling
first.
like you wanted to get in sometime.
It's brother. You
I
gotta,
can't do it.
I told y'all got to talk to me, man.
We can't do it. We can't do it.
Not today. Not today.
Yeah,
not today. We're going to
it.
respect people's time. 1, 2, then 3. We're going to do that. Yes.
What would be your response to Egypt, which was an ancient imperialistic power, and almost all the iconography as they display Nubians, which, by the way, are almost always displayed as prisoners or primitives in their art? It's a fact. What do you do that they almost always precede Nubia with vile? Vile Kush is how ancient Egyptians describe Nubia. What do you say to that?
First, let me say, Brother Vocab Malone, we got a lot of work to do. Because you've been misled. First of all, you should understand that for most of the time that Kemet existed, the place we call Nubia was a group of different peoples. It was not, listen, you're talking and not listening. I'm teaching now. You need to be taught based on what you just said. Honestly, with no disrespect. So that there were groups, large groups of people that were not one nation for most of the time that Kemet was in power. There were times that Kemet would have disagreements with one group and work with other groups. Sometimes when the European shows you these images, they're, for example, showed you very often, if we had more time, I'd show it to you, the image of Tutankhamen on one of his boxes. And he's actually on a chariot killing people that you would think are Nubian. And they just show you that. But, brother, I have been to the museums and I've seen the box with my own eyes. The other side, there are Nubians behind him fighting with him. They don't show you that section because they want you to believe that the Kemetic people are not you. That is the challenge. Now, you have to understand that Kemet was not, we're talking about 3,000 years. Kemet was not always imperialistic. Kemet became imperialistic after the Hyksos, some of you know what I'm saying. After the Hyksos come forward, the Hekshasu, those people that may be the Proto-Hebrews, come and take control of their land, they say never again. That's when they become imperialistic. So you have to understand all 3,000 years. You watched the documentary. That's nice. You didn't read the... And guess what? If you look, by the way, I've read the dissertation as well.
Gotcha.
He talks about which period he's talking about. He doesn't talk about all of them. So what you have to do is have a better understanding to make those comments. By the way, in terms of being wretched, the Kemetic people believed that there were 9 groups of people that they had to be able to fight in order to be in control.
Gotcha.
Some of them were Nubian. There was more than one Nubian group because they disagreed with some and worked with others. The Magi, for example, worked with the Kemetic people for a long time. They were the police.
Gotcha.
So please don't conflate that.
Yeah, we got to move.
By the way, Nubia is a new word.
Gotcha.
You just smashed 4,000 years.
Gotcha. We're gonna come here and
I got a question.
yeah, because I'm burning.
You gotta talk.
First, I want to.
You and me gotta talk.
First, I just want to thank you, Brother Jabari, and you, Dr. Bantu, for being here and just for the love and the disposition that y'all both have displayed. So I appreciate you both. My question is for Dr. Bantu, just to kind of revisit the misogyny question in Christianity and give you opportunity to say a little bit more.
It's the same question.
Are there particular verses in the New Testament that shape how you as a Christian value your wife or other women that you encounter?
Oh.
What verses would help you, that helps
He
you?
got it. He got it. Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. So again, as I mentioned, even within the church, there's different views about certain questions, but for the most part, there's no disagreement about various passages like in Ephesians 5 that says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. And there's virtually no disagreement that men and women are made in the image of God. And then therefore that is instructional about how husbands are to treat their wife and how men in general are supposed to treat women. And so, and there's all kind of passages like that lead to a general consensus about the equality, the fundamental, kind of essential equality of men and women as equally created in the image of God, and then therefore worthy of love and respect and adoration and care.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to come here to this last one. This is going to be the last question. We're going to give one another time to bust it up a little bit afterwards.
Can I say one thing? It's going to be 10 seconds. It's going to be 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
I want to say that as we talk about misogyny, I was the one that brought that up. Some of you are trying to give him extra swipes at that ball.
We'll come in there.
I really think that it's an issue that we have to address in a lot of communities because our sisters are critical and important to us moving forward. That's it.
Thank you, brother. We're going to come here because we got to shut it down. We got to shut it down. My team's hitting me. So we're going to bring Chris up, but we're going to go ahead and ask this last question, then we got to shut it down.
My question is for Brother Jabari. Who is the God that you all worship or you ascribe to?
That's a good question that I get sometimes for folks who are really genuinely trying to understand what we do, but may not understand everything. Sometimes you've been told that we are, for example, polytheist. We would not describe our tradition that way. African traditions, most African traditions, all that I have found, actually argue that the divine force is all things. How do you describe something that is everything? If the ceiling was the floor and the floor the ceiling, what would you call it? And so they don't spend a lot of time talking about the one divine force. They talk about how the force behaves in different instances. It's a coalescement of divine energy that allows you to do certain things. Now, having said that, that means that I may call in a multiplicity of names. I am a priest of the shrine of Ma'at. So that is the shrine that I have consecrated with my queen. But I call before I got up here, I called certain names. So I don't see that as like being a different God. Does that make sense? It's a different type of energy. I believe that the divine force is not just energy, it's also matter. But the fact is that when you see these things, our inability to see past with our five senses betrays us. So that what we do is we think that I am distinct from this table, that he is distinct from me. And in actuality, that is, to some degree, an illusion. And so this is a really complex topic, but I want you to understand that you could, if I'm going into battle, I may call one name. By the way, Kemetic people, you see me dressed in red and black. What was I doing? Somebody just said, yeah, see, they whispering because they didn't want you to know that I am invoking Sutek because I'm going into battle. And so that is, see, look at them smiling. They know that. So there are different names that you can call.
Thank you so much, brother. Let's give these brothers a big round of applause for this conversation.
That was good, man. I really enjoyed that.
Excellent. Real quick, I just want to thank some folk. It's going to take, please don't dip out, because I just want to thank some folk. Just like 3 minutes. Can y'all sit for just 1 second? Just 3 minutes. I want to get a mic to Chris, and he's going to close us out. Let's thank the King Movement for helping put this on. And Brother Chris Bashard, with all his sports analyzing to fit us in. Thank you for fitting us in, bruh. You know.
Welcome.
And thank Epiphany Fellowship for your investment financially into this. My team, all my media folk, all of my hospitality, security that you see and don't see. One special person I want to thank is Sister Katrina Williams. Hold up your hand, girl. She helped do the lion's share of this, and all of our team, and just want to say thank you, all of you, for being committed to this. Last person I got to thank, I don't know where my queen is. Babe, you in here anywhere? Because I know she just been in and out of the hospital, so her being able to come has been a blessing. So I'm glad I wouldn't be able to do what I do without that woman of God in my life. I'm going to hand it over to Brother Chris, and he's going to close us out.
I'm just going to be quick. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Did everybody have a good time? We were worried that 4 hours.
Before they do that, they're going to get mad at me. Make sure if you brought any trash in, it leaves with you.
Yes, please.
Touch somebody and say, get your trash. Amen.
We were worried that 4 hours was too long, but y'all look like y'all ready to stay for a few more. So this was great. Black people coming together, disagreeing, but not being disagreeable. That's awesome. That's awesome. People think we can't do that. So I know we got some brothers here from different communities, Hebrews and stuff. They want next, and we can work that out. But I had a great time with all of you. I'm going to leave you with this. You might know, as Pastor said, I'm a sports broadcaster. Used to be at ESPN, now I'm at Fox Sports. If you love Jesus, Yeshua, and you love black people, then start watching Fox Sports 1 instead of ESPN. I'll leave you with that. Peace.